Welcome to Photoactive, a podcast about photography and technology. I'm Kirk McElhearn.
And I'm Jeff Carlson.
You can find show notes, including any photos we discuss in this episode, at photoactive.co. That's photoactive.co. Apple bought out a company. Now, Apple buys companies. I think Tim Cook once said they buy 6 or 8 companies a year. They're mostly small. They don't get much publicity over it. And this time they bought out the company that makes Pixelmator and Photomator. We've had them on the show once, twice, I don't remember.
I want to say at least once. Yeah.
Yeah, at least, okay. We've had them on the show once. And these are apps that we both appreciate a great deal. I particularly like Photomator because of the way it reproduces your photos library and lets you do advanced editing, just like Nitro from Gentleman Coders, who's been on the show several times. Pixelmator is... I guess it's a Photoshop replacement. It's way too powerful for a lot of what I do. And people have been speculating in the Apple sphere about what's going to happen to the apps. And I want to suggest what I think is going to happen. Okay. I think they're going to take Photomator and turn that into Photos. In other words, Photomator has advanced tools compared to Photos, already manages the Photos library. It's probably not too hard to graft a lot of those tools onto the Photos app. Then Pixelmator might become Photos Pro, which could be a subscription app that would link together with the Photos app the way Pixelmator links with Photomator, and would give Apple a real good photo editing solution without having to build it in-house. And both Pixelmator and Photomator are very Mac-like apps. They've won Apple Design Awards. You could almost think that they were designed in Cupertino.
Yeah, totally. In fact, one of the things that I'm sure was a big appeal for this purchase was the fact that Pixelmator, they go deep into the Apple way of programming. So I'm not a programmer, but they use a lot of Apple's native technologies, a lot of the core imaging, core animation, all of that sort of thing, and are really one of the best examples of companies who are doing that. And that also applies to the iPad and the iPhone. So they are the poster child for how Apple really wants developers to make things for their platforms.
Of course, that can be a risk because if the platform owner itself makes a change that they can't support, then that's a problem. But they've been lucky and they've adapted every time Apple has changed APIs and all the rest.
I'm sure Apple's never done that to developers in the past. They're like virtual tomatoes being thrown at me by developers right now. So so this is very interesting. A couple of other interesting things about it. One, typically when Apple makes an acquisition, they don't say anything about it. Or if word comes out, they have like this stock line that just says Apple sometimes acquires small companies from time to time. And like, that's it. And in this fashion, Apple has not said anything more than, yes, this happened. And when you go to the Pixelmator page about this, we'll link in the show notes. It really basically just says, hey, we're very excited. Apple's buying us. And that's it. The apps will stay as they are for now, but they also leave that open to the future. Like, who knows what else is going to happen? So here's the big question that everybody has been asking. Is this the return of Aperture?
Well, it wouldn't be the return of Aperture, but is this the return of a pro photo editing and library management app that would do much of what Aperture did, but better?
Yeah. And my take on this is probably going to be more cynical because I know there are so many photographers who used Aperture, who loved Aperture. Nick Bott of Gentleman Coders, like he ran Aperture back in the day. And there's so many people who long to go back to that. And I'm going to be the wet blanket and say that is not going to happen just because there's not a great reason for Apple to do it. They have Adobe providing that big graphical photo imaging stalwart app, right, for the Mac. It's been on the Mac forever. It's there. I don't see why Apple would want to compete with that. Now, we could do the parallel to Final Cut Pro. So Final Cut Pro is a competitor to Premiere.
And even Logic Pro, which is a competitor to a lot of DAW apps.
Exactly. So from that point of view, like it does make sense that imaging is like the next big quadrant that Apple tried and they abandoned, and maybe they want to bring that back because they want to have a pro application, a pro solution. Final Cut seems to be doing fine, but it's not burning up the market. From what I understand, all of the professionals use Premiere Pro, or now they're starting to get into more DaVinci Resolve. And I mean, I use Final Cut Pro when I need to do video, and I like the way it works, and I like a lot of the things that they did to try to advance the state of art, but it just hasn't been picked up as broadly as one would like. So what would an Apple Pro photo app bring to the market? And I can't see it being that much of a difference.
It's more like something that Apple needs in the portfolio to say that they have pro apps, if you think about it that way. But again, if they can bring some improvements from Photomator into the Photos app, that's improvements for everyone. So they have two apps here and not just a single one. I want to note something that's on the Pixelmator blog where they say, Pixelmator has signed an agreement to be acquired by Apple subject to regulatory approval. What sort of regulatory approval could there be? Could it be because Pixelmator's a Lithuanian company and they need approval on their end? I don't know.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. I just figured it was, would Apple be putting itself into more of a monopolistic position because it has a pro app that's native and could be given away for free? Basically anti-competitive
Logic Pro and
stuff.
Final Cut Pro aren't free. In fact, they're quite expensive.
Yeah.
So I don't see that as a problem. But I think maybe it's on the Lithuanian end that being bought out by an American company needs regulatory approval. I don't know. We'll find out at some point.
Yeah.
They're both still available from the Mac App Store, and you can still get I bought the lifetime license for Photomator when they released the new version for, I believe it was $80, and you can still get that.
Yeah. They're great. And I don't anticipate any immediate changes. A lot of times these things happen, and like the worst case story or the cautionary tale. The cautionary tale is Dark Sky. So Dark Sky was the app that did weather forecasting and rain prediction specifically. Apple bought them. Nothing happened for a couple of years, and then they finally rolled it into the weather app. And a lot of people are disappointed because it doesn't seem to be as good. So it's still the core technologies. Hopefully that's not going to be the case. My cynical take, and I almost don't want to say it because if I'm right, it sucks. But my cynical take is this is a talent acquisition, because obviously the developers behind this are very good. They know Apple stuff. And I would bet that this has more to do with future Vision Pro imaging solutions than it does anything on the Mac or the iPhone or anything. Because I think what the Vision Pro does not have is a good professional photo editor. Lightroom works on it, but I think Apple wants to do something that's more than that and not be beholden to Adobe to do the innovation. I can see this as like in 3 years, 4 years, we'll see the results of what this is. But my gut reaction is this is for Vision Pro. And I almost didn't want to say that to you because I know you love the Vision Pro product so much that
I'm saving up for one.
Are you really?
I'm putting $1 aside every week until I get enough money to buy a Vision Pro.
Okay. You had mentioned that when you were in London, you were going to do a test. Did you?
I wasn't able to do it. I wasn't able to do it when I had scheduled an appointment. Then I went back later that afternoon. They said, "No, we got no time now. Everyone's too busy." I don't think anyone was busy. I think they just don't care. If I had thought to do the reservation from my phone before I went to the Apple Store, which was literally 7 minutes from my hotel, not even 5 minutes from my hotel, maybe I could have done it. But I was I had things to do, and it didn't work for the time that I had set it for the morning. So I missed out on it. So
that's fine.
Unfortunately, I will never see the Vision Pro because it'll be discontinued before I get back to an Apple store.
Yeah, that is a possibility.
There are some suggestions among the rumor mills that Apple has stopped production until at least the end of next year because they've already produced more units than they can sell. And you've heard me say here and everywhere else, Apple needs a big failure, and they need this in order to get the humility of a company that doesn't always win. And the Apple car wasn't a failure because it was never announced, right? It was never released. But the Vision Pro is currently a failure. Anyway, this isn't a Vision Pro podcast. We want to talk about the replace thing in Apple Photos, which is kind of cool, but not perfect. And I want to start with a photo that I shot in London. So I stayed by Covent Garden. I was in a hotel right by Covent Garden. If you've never been to Covent Garden, it's very noisy. It's got all these outdoor restaurants and cafes and street performers and everything. So I didn't have time to take any fancy photos, but I did take a few just to get the lay of the land. So here, if you look at the before and after, I took this and I thought, okay, I just want to, remember what this looks like. And then when I came home, I used the replace tool on Apple Photos, and quite frankly, I'm stunned about what it could do. So in the first photo, you see there's a lot of people standing. There's a guy sitting on the curb looking at his phone playing a game, and they're all gone in the next photo. And the thing that I want to say about this is, first of all, it's not for mission critical photos. It's for this kind of photo where you've taken a picture, there's a lot of people standing around and you want to remove them. It's for Apple's example of a few people on a beach and someone in the back photobombing, you want to remove them. It's for little things that you don't care if people notice that it's not perfect. So we'll put these in the show notes. If you look where the guy's sitting on the curb in the after photo, you'll see the bricks where he was sitting aren't perfectly straight. But if you look at that without knowing, you'll just think, well, the bricks weren't straight. This is London, right? If you look at the left of the photo, it's a little bit worse on the left because at the very far left, you've got some pillars in front of a restaurant. And when you look at the way that the Photos app cloned things in between the pillars, they obviously look false, but they're on the edge of the picture. You won't notice them. If I showed someone this picture and I said, wow, I was at Covent Garden and it was really empty, they would think, yeah, wow, it looks empty. So I think this is an example of you want to make your tourist pictures a little bit better. You want to get rid of the people in, what is it, St. Mark's Plaza in Venice or in front of the Duomo in Florence. And you don't care if it looks perfect. What you want is the appearance of, you want to be like the guy at the front of the line where everyone's waiting to get the shot for Instagram, right? You want to be in front of the waterfall with no one else. That's what you want to do. And it's not necessarily a good or bad thing. I took another picture, I won't put in here, of my son and his girlfriend in a coffee shop. And I was outside and they were in front of the window and there was a waitress right behind each of them, like on the edge. And I said, wow, this doesn't look good. So I took them out. It doesn't look perfect. You see the bits of the waitress's uniform a little bit lower below her head and shoulders on one side, and the other one you see a bit of an arm. It doesn't matter. It's good enough if you want to take a photo and just remove distractions. That's my opinion. Now, obviously, I'm writing an article for one of my clients about using this, and I was going to take some Creative Commons free stock photos and see what happens. Now, these are photos that'll certainly be better because you've got something on a simple background instead of cobblestones and trees and all of that, and you'll be able to remove items a lot easier. But again, I think this is a fun tool, but it's not for mission critical photos.
I think that's a really good broad overview of that. So a couple of things I want to point out. And actually, I'm sorry that I didn't mention this at the beginning. This tool so far is only available as part of Apple Intelligence.
Right.
So if you're using the Photos app and you don't have Apple Intelligence, there is a retouch tool that's been there for a while, but only on the Mac. It doesn't exist on the iPhone or the iPad for whatever reason. And it's fine. And basically what it does is it's grabbing pixels from elsewhere in the image, like doing a clone and stamp type of technique.
It's good for spot removal.
It's great for spot removal, things like that. But what this is doing, this cleanup tool is really designed to get rid of those distractions and replace them with something else that's plausible. With dots and lens dust and things like that, it's pretty easy to just make that fix because it's like a little smudge or whatever. But when you're removing a person or a car or something like that, it needs to replace that area with pixels. And so what this does, and the reason why it's part of Apple Intelligence, is it's using generative AI to look at the scene, figure out what's going on, and then make a guess as to what's plausible to replace that area. So that's the structure of how it works.
Right. So in order to have Apple Intelligence, you need to be running iOS 18.1, iPadOS 18.1, or macOS Sequoia 15.1. You need a compatible device, which would be an M1 or later Mac, an M1 or later iPad, or the new iPad mini, which is an A17 something, Pro. Any iPhone 16 model, or the iPhone 15 Pro or Pro Max. So if you've got older stuff, skip to the end of this podcast. There's nothing for you to hear.
Exactly. No. Listen, because you'll be listening about the future.
Yes. Well, it might tempt you to get a new Mac, iPad, or iPhone, but honestly, you don't need to get a new Mac, iPad, or iPhone just for these Apple Intelligence features. And whether it be the image features or the writing tools, there's nothing that we have yet that, in my opinion, makes it worth an upgrade.
So the other thing to point out that you touched on was the results that you get are really going to depend on whatever it is that you're cleaning up. So sometimes if you have like people in the background, that's a lot easier to fix because it's a small relative area. And actually, one of the things that I like about the implementation of this is when you click on the cleanup tool, it's going to scan your image and it'll make suggested things. Typically people, animals sometimes, cars, garbage cans, like things that it knows in the background.
It'll pre-select things. Yeah.
It'll pre-select things and highlight them with a little glimmer, glow, animation, whatever. And so then you can just tap those and it goes away. And that's really cool. Something like Lightroom, you're having to draw around the thing that you want to get rid of. Now you can also draw around something here too. But what it does is if you do draw around an area, it's still going to examine that area and figure out which part it should do. So I'll put a couple of examples here. When I was in Stockholm, one of the metro stations has this great rainbow painting on the rock. So the metro stations, a lot of them are just hewn right out of the rock. And so you have bare rock. And so they painted a whole bunch of them. So one of them, I took a picture of these two people who were standing in front of this rainbow. The man was taking a picture of the woman. And I figured that would be a good example of something where I want to get rid of them. And so in the picture that will be in the show notes, I drew a selection around them and also around their shadow and reflection in the floor. And what it did was it didn't just replace all those pixels. It said, all right, there's a person here and there's a reflection here. That's probably what you want to have replaced. And that's what it replaced. And it did a fairly good job.
I think it did an excellent job. The wall is excellent. I think what's not great is that there's still a bit of shadow on the ground that it didn't remove. But I mean, that's still, I find that just wonderful that it could do something like that. And that, again, at first glance, it looks real. Maybe you would crop the photo to get rid of that shadow.
Well, actually, what you do next is just then do another selection, draw over the shadow.
Around the shadow, yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing. You can do multiple selections. You can do in fact, the photo that I showed of Covent Garden was done in about 6 or 8 steps, where I selected one person and a group of people, then more people, then more people. So, yeah, you can keep doing that.
Yeah.
Until you've removed everything.
Exactly. I mean, why would you want actually anything there? So I'm going to be nitpicky because I know some people are going to. One of the great distinctions that you made was how well you expect this to perform. Because if you zoom in on my picture, you'll see that actually the rainbow area in the back is a bit chunky. It didn't do a great smooth job of replacing that. And
the tiles on the wall below the rainbow are also, they were cracked and broken.
A little bit off, yeah. So if you are trying to go for really great fidelity and you're going to take this, you're going to print it large, then that's probably not going to be a great idea because the quality is not quite there. Now, one of the things I want to point out, there was an article in Petapixel that we'll link to where they wrote about how Apple's cleanup tool was so much better than Adobe's. And the examples that he puts in there are really good. And yet, in my experience, it's mostly been the opposite. It's mostly been Lightroom will do a better job, I think, because they've developed more of an image generative AI network to handle it.
Because they've snarfed up more of your photos. There's
also that. Yep. And in fact, that gives me another good reason to put another link in the show notes. Six Colors had a really good article about why cleanup is a more ethical, I guess, choice for doing this sort of thing because of the way that the images are sourced. So we'll link to that too. A lot of links this time. But anyway, so I find that some areas work better. If you have like kind of a noisy background, leaves, things like that, it'll do a better job. If you have more distinct things that it has to reconstruct, then it can look a little bit garbagey. And every once in a while, you'll do something and it will just be awful. And that's kind of also the nature of generative AI remove tools because you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, with Apple's implementation, one of the things that I like about the way Lightroom does it, it'll give you a few different options and then you can refresh that if you don't like what you got and it will try again. With here, you can undo it, but if you try to do the same thing again, it tends to just give you the same result. So it seems a little bit less
flexible. One thing that I've noticed is if you try to do the same thing, it's selecting the same thing you tried the first time. So you need to actually duplicate the photo and start over. It's remembering your selection, and it's not letting you undo that selection. That's a little bit annoying.
Yeah, I think it's caching it or something like that. So
talk about your second photo because I find that one really impressive.
So this next image I took when I was just walking down the sidewalk. Not a great picture. We've talked about street photography. This is not a great example of street photography, but there were some really nice long shadows. And actually a woman ahead of me had really great highlights in her hair. And so I just, lifted my camera. This was with my X100V and just took a quick snap. Well, on the left side of the frame, there's a person walking toward me and he has a big, nice long shadow, right? I should have made this black and white. Then it would have been perfect.
Yep. Yeah.
But anyway, so I want to get rid of the guy on the left. So I drew a circle around him and his big long shadow. Now, intersecting that is glass overhangs above some stores. And so they're casting these big rectangular shadows as well. So when I ran this through cleanup, it not only figured out that I wanted to get rid of him and his shadow, and while it's processing, it actually highlighted him and the shadow, not like the whole area. But the result actually got rid of him. It rebuilt the rectangular shadows. And honestly, I don't think even pixel peeping, unless you're being super, super specific about it, you would not notice that there was a person here in the cleaned up photo. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think, but see, this photo has straight lines, right? And this probably made it easier for the AI to understand the straight lines. And so, if, for instance, it draws a straight line between the first and second shadow, which probably shouldn't be there. But I think it does does what you wanted in that photo, right? You got rid of that person. I see you've selected the other people further down the street, and you could maybe get rid of them, maybe get rid of the cars, maybe get rid of the buildings in the background as if the whole thing's in a green screen. But again, it's not going to be perfect, but it can do good things. Now, I put another pair of photos. This photo, just like the other one of Covent Garden, is just a photo that I took just as a reminder. Okay, so before 2 is people waiting on wine in front of the Apple store at Covent Garden. You can see the Apple logo.
Yep.
And if you look at after 2, you'll see that I've just removed all those people, and it doesn't look like they were ever there. And it looks like no one's waiting outside the Apple store anymore because no one needs to wait outside the Apple store. And when you look at the columns, right, the way the columns are rendered, they're not perfect because I think I used the ultra wide camera. So the columns right by the door are not entirely straight, but at first glance, you don't notice it. It's really good. It's effective for what it is, and we have to do an episode of what is a photograph, right? Because now we're getting into uncanny valley stuff where sometimes it looks really good. Sometimes when you pixel peep, look close, you're going to find something that you can tell that it's been altered. But I think it doesn't matter for a lot of photos, that if you just want to capture something and simplify it and remove something, this sort of tool is fine.
Yeah. I think that casual nature of photography is really where this shines, because you want to show somebody where you were and you want to get rid of the super annoying person in the background, right? Like that's exactly what this is for. I want to point out one other very cool feature that I didn't realize was here. They call it a security filter, I think. So let's say that there's a picture of you and I, and you don't want anybody to know that you were ever seen with me. So what you can do is you draw a circle around my face. And this can be, a picture of the two of us both large in frame. So we're not in the background or whatever. So when you draw a circle around a person's face, it will pixelate that and anonymize them. It's a super clever implementation. Now, if you draw another circle, it will try to remove it, and then that's just nightmare fuel. But just doing the one circle around somebody's face, it won't try to get rid of them. It will just give you that mosaic of here's a person that you don't want to reveal their identity. I think that's really kind of cool.
Okay, so I have a question about this whole thing. Looking at the photos that I took and you took, we removed people. We didn't remove anything else. And I haven't tried with photos that weren't taken with an iPhone. Is the Photos app doing this because the iPhone has a depth map of the photo?
No, I don't think so. I think it's strictly just figuring out what it sees just on a surface level.
If it did have depth maps, it would know this is a person further away. I guess not, because your shadows, right? Your shadow wasn't depth mappable. It's an impressive technology when you think about it.
It is, yeah. I think if you want higher quality, you're going to use something else. If you want something quick and easy, this will work perfectly fine. And if you're going to pixel peep, then don't, because you'll drive yourself crazy. But I think predominantly most cases you're going to be removing small distractions. And that's really what this is for. Like there's some litter on the ground, or you're standing on grass and there's like a dead patch. You go over that and it'll be
cat, but
or a dead cat. If there's
or
a
dead pigeon,
cat,
or
yeah, totally. Why? You must live in the country.
It's true. We have a lot of pigeons around here. Different kind of pigeons than you get in Covent Garden. There are a lot of pigeons there too.
Yeah. So anyway, I think this can be very useful. It's not going to be a magic fix everything in one swipe kind of a tool, but nothing really is. So
compared to our last few episodes where we've been flummoxed by the huge number of choices and battered by the gale force winds of uncertainty, or whatever it was you said, I think here we're in agreement of this works within limitations. You can use it for this. It won't be better than that. And there's no sorts of It doesn't make us want to qualify every statement. You don't have to go into settings. Anyone can use it. It's not like it's not like understanding the photo file formats from the last episode and the camera control and all these other things that we've talked about recently. So kudos to Apple for doing that.
Well, and also it's friendly because when you turn it on, it's going to automatically suggest things that you might want to remove. And those are probably the things that you were thinking of anyway.
Yeah.
So that works out really well. Yeah.
Okay, that's enough for this week. The next round of Apple Intelligence features seem to be coming out around December. I don't think there's anything to do with photos in that. There's the image creation things, the Genmojis and all, which is images. Well, there's the generative image playground thing, but that has nothing to do with photo. We'll see if there are any other new photo features. Oh, there is something new in the latest 18.2 beta, and that's some additions to the camera control. So we'll be able to talk about that in December.
Yes. And also, a last reminder, all of this is beta. Technically, all of the Apple Intelligence stuff is beta.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
The 18.1 is the official release, but they're calling it beta because they want to say it's not perfect yet. Don't expect perfection.
Exactly. Yeah. So big asterisks on everything, but you can use it.
Thanks for listening to Photoactive. You can find show notes, including any photos we discuss in this episode, at photoactive.co. That's photoactive.co. We couldn't afford the M. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/photoactivecast. That's photoactivecast in one word. You can subscribe to Photoactive in your favorite podcast app or on Apple Podcasts. See the links on our website. And think about leaving us a rating or review in iTunes or in your podcast app.